Through this sermon titled King Asa and King Jehoshaphat, I ask that every member of Zion will correctly establish the direction and path of faith, drawing from the lessons of the past about what it means to receive God's blessing when we place our trust in Him. Asa and Jehoshaphat were kings of Judah. They always strove to do what was right in God's eyes, to keep His laws, decrees, and ordinances, to tear down idols, and to ask themselves, how can I graciously serve only God? It was with that heart that they governed the people and administered the affairs of the nation. As a result, God continually poured out abundant blessings upon them. As Romans chapter 15 tells us, everything that happened in the past was recorded as a lesson for us. Today, through the examples of these two kings, let us take some time to learn wisdom from the Bible by asking, what are the things that please God and bring forth His blessing? Let's take a look at 2 Chronicles chapter 14 verse 1. Second Chronicles chapter 14 verse 1. And Abijah rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. Asa, his son, succeeded him as king, and in his days the country was at peace for 10 years. Asa did what was good and right in the eyes of the Lord his God. He removed the foreign altars and the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. He commanded Judah to seek the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and what else did he command? To obey his laws and commands. He removed the high places and incense altars in every town in Judah, and the kingdom was at peace under him. He built up the fortified cities of Judah, since the land was at peace. No one was at war with him during those years, for the Lord gave him rest. Let us build up these towns, he said to Judah, and put walls around them, with towers, gates, and bars. The land is still ours, because we have sought the Lord our God. We sought Him, and He has given us rest on every side. When we examine the region of Judah during this period, we find that they had lived under relentless foreign invasions, never knowing a moment of true peace. Yet, since Asa consistently honored and upheld God's law, the kingdom of Judah was granted an extended season of peace. Verse 10. Asa went out to meet him, and they took up battle positions in the valley of Zephathah near Mareshah. Then Asa called to the Lord his God and said, Lord, there is no one like you to help the powerless against the mighty. Help us, Lord our God, for we rely on you, and in your name we have come against this vast army. Lord, you are our God. Do not let mere mortals prevail against you. The Lord struck down the Cushites before Asa and Judah. Then what happened? The Cushites fled. In the end, God brought victory to the kingdom of Judah under King Asa's reign. Every detail was not recorded in the Bible. But before they could defeat an army of thousands upon thousands, every single moment must have been filled with the tension of battle, the fear of death, and countless other hardships. Nevertheless, Asa steadfastly relied on God. He could have sought help from the powerful nations surrounding him, but instead, he cried out, "O God, there is no one like you to help the powerless against the mighty." God gave the victory to the kingdom of Judah under King Asa, who trusted in only God when even 1,000,000 Cushites invaded them. Let's see verse 12 again. The Lord struck down the Cushites before Asa and Judah. In the end, the outcome of every war rested in God's hand. Since King Asa had experienced God's coming to Judah's aid, he continually trusted in God and remained steadfast in his faith. This was the decisive factor that allowed the kingdom to grow strong and prosperous throughout Asa's reign. Rather than leaning on people around him, he kept his eyes fixed solely on God, asking, "How can I lead the people to faithfully obey the law and the commands God has given?" He understood better than anyone that this was the very source of every blessing. When we look at the records of the kings in 1st and 2nd Chronicles and 1st and 2nd Kings, we find countless examples of this truth. Let's move on to chapter 15. 2nd Chronicles chapter 15 verse 1. The Spirit of God came on Azariah son of Oded. He went out to meet Asa and said to him, "Listen to me, Asa and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you when you are with him. If you seek him, he will be found by you." Here, seeking means trusting in God and looking to God. If one seeks God with a firm and steadfast faith by saying, "There is no one but God," he will be able to find God. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you. For a long time, Israel was without the true God, without a priest to teach, and without the law. But in their distress, they turned to the Lord, the God of Israel, and sought him, and he was found by them. In those days, it was not safe to travel about, for all the inhabitants of the lands were in great turmoil. One nation was being crushed by another, and one city by another, because God was troubling them with every kind of distress. The Bible records that behind all these troubles, distress, and upheavals, there was a divine providence through which God sought to awaken his people. Let's continue with verse 8. When Asa heard these words and the prophecy of Azariah son of Oded the prophet, he took courage. He removed the detestable idols. He began to destroy all the idols from the whole land of Judah and Benjamin, and from the towns he had captured in the hills of Ephraim. He repaired the altar of the Lord that was in front of the portico of the Lord's temple. God was very pleased because the altar of God was being built again. Verse 9. Then he assembled all Judah and Benjamin, and the people from Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon, who had settled among them, for large numbers had come over to him from Israel when they saw that the Lord his God was with him. Since he always maintained a correct and steadfast faith in God, a great work took place. The hearts of all the people were drawn together towards King Asa. Verse 10. They assembled at Jerusalem in the 3rd month of the 15th year of Asa's reign. At that time they sacrificed to the Lord 700 head of cattle and 7,000 sheep and goats from the plunder they had brought back. They entered into a covenant to seek the Lord, the God of their ancestors, with all their heart and soul. Whenever anything arose, he knew to bring it before God in prayer first. Let's look at verse 13. All who would not seek the Lord, the God of Israel, were to be put to death, whether small or great, man or woman. He even proclaimed, "Whoever does not seek God shall be put to death, young or old, man or woman, without exception." They took an oath to the Lord with loud acclamation, with shouting and with trumpets and horns. All the people took an oath together, declaring, "Those who do not seek God have no place among the people of Judah." Let's look at verse 15. All Judah rejoiced about the oath because they had sworn it wholeheartedly. They sought God eagerly, and he was found by them. So the Lord gave them rest on every side. In this way, when we stand armed with an absolute and unwavering faith in God, He pours out upon us even greater peace, rest, and grace. Let's continue with verse 16. King Asa also deposed his grandmother Maacah from her position as queen mother because she had made a repulsive image for the worship of Asherah. Asa cut it down, broke it up, and burned it in the Kidron Valley. King Asa knew better than anyone that idolatry was what God hated most. Hence, when his grandmother fashioned an idol out of wood, although he could have simply warned her, "Grandmother, please don't do that. God hates it," and left it at that, he went further and stripped her of her position as queen mother. It was precisely because he held to this absolute conviction that God continually bestowed blessings and peace upon the kingdom of Judah. Let's briefly look at chapter 15, verse 19. There was no more war until the 35th year of Asa's reign. God brought all wars to an end for a long time, didn't he? To that degree, everything before God was absolutely followed. Chapter 16, verse 1. In the 36th year of Asa's reign, Baasha king of Israel went up against Judah. Here, we see the moment when King Asa made a grave mistake in the eyes of God. We must never let our hearts be drawn away by powerful figures who appear on the scene, even when we have relied on God alone. Some may think, because of that person, something great will come of this, and God's work of salvation will move forward even more swiftly. When Asa placed his trust in men rather than in God, God was not pleased. We can see this in chapter 16. Let's look at verse 2. Asa then took the silver and gold out of the treasuries of the Lord's temple and of his own palace, and sent it to Ben-Hadad king of Aram, who was ruling in Damascus. When Baasha, king of Israel, waged war to conquer Judah, King Asa sought help from Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, and formed an alliance with him. From that point on, King Asa came to rely on the king of Aram heavily. Let's continue with verse 3. "Let there be a treaty between me and you," he said, "as there was between my father and your father. See, I am sending you silver and gold. Now break your treaty with Baasha king of Israel, so he will withdraw from me." Ben-Hadad agreed with King Asa and sent the commanders of his forces against the towns of Israel. They conquered Ijon, Dan, Abel-Maim, and all the store cities of Naphtali. When Baasha heard this, he stopped building Ramah and abandoned his work. Then King Asa brought all the men of Judah, and they carried away from Ramah the stones and timber Baasha had been using. With them, he built up Geba and Mizpah. At that time, Hanani the seer came to Asa king of Judah and said to him, "Because you relied on the king of Aram and not on the Lord your God, the army of the king of Aram has escaped from your hand. Were not the Cushites and Libyans a mighty army with great numbers of chariots and horsemen? Yet, when you relied on the Lord, he delivered them into your hand." God had always granted King Asa victory, even when a million-strong army came against him. Hence, the prophet was deeply grieved to see that after receiving just a measure of help from the king of Aram, King Asa's heart was entirely captured by him, and he began to place all his trust in him. Verse 9. "For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him." It is written that God always gives strength to those who fully rely on him. You have done a foolish thing, and from now on you will be at war. Hanani said, "Since the king has placed his trust in something other than God, the peace of this kingdom will be shattered from this day forward." It was because God had withdrawn his protecting hand. Why then do we need this history of the past for our lives today? Doesn't the Bible say that God recorded all of history as a lesson, a warning for everything we will face in the days ahead? Although King Asa had never once transgressed God's law or commandments, his heart shifted from relying on God to placing his trust in men. "I won this war because that man came to my aid. With the kingdom of Aram allied with us, we appear far greater in number, stronger in might, and certain to prevail over our enemies. It was within this all-too-human frame of mind that the faith in God he had built up over so many years came crashing down in a single moment. That was why the prophet Hanani declared, "God has sent me to deliver this word to you. There will be no more peace in this land. Wars are coming." Let's look at verse 10. Asa was angry with the seer because of this. He was so enraged that he put him in prison. When King Asa heard this, he became very angry. In anger, he put him in prison. At the same time, Asa brutally oppressed some of the people. King Asa had walked so faithfully until this point, but after receiving help from the king of Aram just once, he was never the same again. Let's continue with verse 11. The events of Asa's reign, from beginning to end, are written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. In the 39th year of his reign, Asa was afflicted with a disease in his feet. Though his disease was severe, even in his illness, he did not seek help from the Lord, but only from the physicians. Then in the 41st year of his reign, Asa died and rested with his ancestors. In his final years, King Asa became entangled in this heartbreaking turn of events. Sometimes we, too, may be constantly drawn to the circumstances around us. People catch our eye, conditions and opportunities capture our attention, and in the midst of it all, we forget God. In those moments, instead of thinking, "If only I had that, things would work out," or "If only that person were here, everything would be fine," you and I must become the ones who never lose faith, believing, if we have God alone, we have everything. This holds true when pioneering the gospel, and equally so when establishing a church for the very first time. I pray that you and I will never forget that if we remain rooted in that faith, God will always take care of us, watch over us, and protect us. After King Asa died, his son Jehoshaphat likewise honored the will of God and governed the kingdom of Judah faithfully throughout his reign. He possessed the godly wisdom to keep all the people looking to God at all times. Let's look at chapter 17, verse 1. Jehoshaphat his son succeeded him as king and strengthened himself against Israel. He stationed troops in all the fortified cities of Judah and put garrisons in Judah and in the towns of Ephraim that his father Asa had captured. The Lord was with Jehoshaphat because he followed the ways of his father David before him. He did not consult the Baals, but sought the God of his father and followed his commands rather than the practices of Israel. While Israel was descending into idolatry, Judah continued to honor God's commandments, decrees, and laws. They held firmly to the conviction that if they truly revered God alone, they could prevail in any war, and that as long as God was with them, the kingdom would remain in peace. King Jehoshaphat was always mindful of this truth. He was one of the kings who sought God's counsel, received his answer, and only then moved forward with any undertaking. Let's continue with verse 5. The Lord established the kingdom under his control. God kept the kingdom of Judah, ruled by King Jehoshaphat, who obeyed God's commandments and refused to follow the corrupt practices of Israel, in lasting peace and made it strong. Let's continue with verse 5. The Lord established the kingdom under his control, and all Judah brought gifts to Jehoshaphat, so that he had great wealth and honor. He was exalted to the highest honor, to the point where no greater wealth or glory could be added. His heart was devoted to the ways of the Lord. Furthermore, he removed the high places and the Asherah poles from Judah. In the 3rd year of his reign, he sent his officials Ben-Hail, Obadiah, Zechariah, Nethanel, and Micaiah to teach in the towns of Judah. With them were certain Levites, Shemaiah, Nethaniah, Zebediah, Asahel, Shemiramoth, Jehonathan, Adonijah, Tobijah, and Tobadonijah, and the priests Elishama and Jehoram. They taught throughout Judah, taking with them the book of the law of the Lord. They went around to all the towns of Judah and taught the people. He dispatched the Levites and priests to travel throughout every city and instruct all the people in the law of God. When they did this, God was greatly pleased. The kingdom of Judah grew ever stronger, and the surrounding nations began to live in fear of it. Let's look at verse 10. The fear of the Lord fell on all the kingdoms of the lands surrounding Judah, so that they did not go to war against Jehoshaphat. Granting victory in war was a great gift from God, but he even instilled fear in the enemy so that they did not even dare to attack. Since Jehoshaphat was zealous in sending the Levites and priests to teach the people the law of God and help them understand it correctly, God was pleased with his work and struck the surrounding nations with such fear that they did not dare to set their eyes on Judah. How could anyone dare to start a war when they are gripped by fear of their opponent? Verse 12. Jehoshaphat became more and more powerful. He built forts and store cities in Judah and had large supplies in the towns of Judah. He also kept experienced fighting men in Jerusalem. I encourage you to learn wisdom from the records of these successive dynasties and learn what it looks like to walk in a manner that receives God's blessing. Let's turn to chapter 18, verse 1. Now Jehoshaphat had great wealth and honor, and he allied himself with Ahab by marriage. Some years later, he went down to see Ahab in Samaria. Ahab slaughtered many sheep and cattle for him and the people with him, and urged him to attack Ramoth-Gilead. While Ahab was pressing to launch the attack on Ramoth-Gilead without hesitation, Jehoshaphat urged caution. Wouldn't it be right for us to seek God's counsel first? In the end, it was this very matter that led to King Ahab's death. Though Jehoshaphat had joined him in battle, God delivered him from the conflict. Jehoshaphat wore his royal robes, while King Ahab disguised himself in the garments of an ordinary soldier and slipped onto the battlefield. Yet, when all the enemy forces converged on Jehoshaphat, who was wearing his royal robes, God intervened to protect him, turning the enemies away so that they pursued him no further. King Ahab had disguised himself as a common soldier, yet he was struck by a random arrow and killed. Even when we look back on history, King Ahab ruled based on what he could see with his own eyes, rather than on the thoughts of God. King Jehoshaphat, despite reaching the height of wealth and glory, was one of the kings who always sought God's answer before taking any action, no matter the circumstance. Let's take a look at chapter 19, verse 4. Jehoshaphat lived in Jerusalem, and he went out again among the people from Beersheba to the hill country of Ephraim, and turned them back to the Lord, the God of their ancestors. He labored tirelessly, always holding to the conviction that the hearts of the people, hearts that had been stolen away by idols, must be turned back to the Lord. Verse 5. He appointed judges in the land, in each of the fortified cities of Judah. He told them, "Consider carefully what you do, because you are not judging for mere mortals, but for the Lord, who is with you whenever you give a verdict. Now let the fear of the Lord be on you. Judge carefully, for with the Lord our God there is no injustice or partiality or bribery." In Jerusalem also, Jehoshaphat appointed some of the Levites, priests and heads of Israelite families to administer the law of the Lord and to settle disputes, and they lived in Jerusalem. He gave them these orders: "You must serve faithfully and wholeheartedly in the fear of the Lord." Whenever he commissioned them to carry out a task, he gave them these orders: "You must serve faithfully and wholeheartedly in the fear of the Lord." Verse 10. In every case that comes before you from your people who live in the cities, whether bloodshed or other concerns of the law, commands, decrees, or regulations, you are to warn them not to sin against the Lord. Otherwise, his wrath will come on you and your people. When people acted without discerning whether something was God's will or not, he never forgot the charge. Teach them well, so that the wrath of God does not come upon them. Since this was the kind of king Jehoshaphat was, he enjoyed a degree of glory that surpassed every king before him, but his heart towards God never grew cold. Chapter 20, verse 1. After this, the Moabites and Ammonites with some of the Meunites came to wage war against Jehoshaphat. Some people came and told Jehoshaphat, "A vast army is coming against you from Edom, from the other side of the Dead Sea. It is already in Hazezon Tamar," that is, En-gedi. Alarmed, Jehoshaphat resolved to inquire of the Lord. Whenever something fearful arose, whether a great crisis or a small one, he always turned to God in prayer. He had great wealth and glory, and all the surrounding nations stood in fear of him. He could simply have summoned a few nations, formed an alliance, and driven the enemy back. Verse 4. The people of Judah came together to seek help from the Lord. Indeed, they came from every town in Judah to seek him. Then Jehoshaphat stood up in the assembly of Judah and Jerusalem at the temple of the Lord, in the front of the new courtyard, and said, "Lord, the God of our ancestors, are you not the God who is in heaven? You rule over all the kingdoms of the nations. Power and might are in your hand, and no one can withstand you. Our God, did you not drive out the inhabitants of this land before your people Israel, and give it forever to the descendants of Abraham your friend? They have lived in it, and have built in it a sanctuary for your name, saying, 'If calamity comes upon us, whether the sword of judgment, or plague, or famine, we will stand in your presence before this temple that bears your name, and will cry out to you in our distress, and you will hear us and save us.' But now here are men from Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir, whose territory you would not allow Israel to invade when they came from Egypt. So they turned away from them and did not destroy them. See how they are repaying us by coming to drive us out of the possession you gave us as an inheritance. Our God, will you not judge them? For we have no power to face this vast army that is attacking us. We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you." Just like King Asa, King Jehoshaphat declared, "Our eyes are fixed on you alone. There is no strength we can rely on, none except God." This does not mean that Judah, the kingdom Jehoshaphat ruled, had no army. Had he thought he could handle the situation with his soldiers alone, he would never have prayed like this. Since he understood more deeply than anyone that the outcome of every battle rests with God, he came before God and cried out, "We have no power to face this vast multitude, and we do not know what to do, but our eyes are fixed on you. Please help us." Jehoshaphat's earnest prayer ascended to heaven. Let's continue with verse 13. All the men of Judah, with their wives and children and little ones, stood there before the Lord. Then the Spirit of the Lord came on Jahaziel, son of Zechariah, the son of Benaiah, the son of Jeiel, the son of Mattaniah, a Levite and descendant of Asaph, as he stood in the assembly. He said, "Listen, King Jehoshaphat and all who live in Judah and Jerusalem. This is what the Lord says to you. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army, for the battle is not yours, but God's. Tomorrow, march down against them. They will be climbing up by the pass of Ziz, and you will find them at the end of the gorge in the desert of Jeruel. You will not have to fight this battle. take up your positions, stand firm and see the deliverance the Lord will give you, Judah and Jerusalem. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. Go out to face them tomorrow, and the Lord will be with you. Jehoshaphat bowed down with his face to the ground, and all the people of Judah and Jerusalem fell down in worship before the Lord. Then some Levites from the Kohathites and Korahites stood up and praised the Lord, the God of Israel, with a very loud voice. Early in the morning they left for the desert of Tekoa. As they set out, Jehoshaphat stood and said, "Listen to me, Judah and people of Jerusalem. Have faith in the Lord your God, and you will be upheld. Have faith in his prophets, and you will be successful." After consulting the people, Jehoshaphat appointed men to sing to the Lord and to praise him for the splendor of his holiness as they went out at the head of the army, saying, "Give thanks to the Lord, for his love endures forever." As they began to sing and praise, the Lord set ambushes against the men of Ammon and Moab and Mount Seir, who were invading Judah, and they were defeated. Give thanks to God, for his love endures forever. Those who sang this praise marched at the very front, advancing with worship on their lips. From the historical records, may we discover what path truly pleases God and what path leads to his blessing. May both you and I hold firmly to that walk of faith. When we look at the records of the kings of Israel and Judah throughout history, very few of them were kings who pleased God. Nearly all of them did evil, fell into idolatry, and became entangled in things that were not pleasing to God. Yet, King Asa and King Jehoshaphat left behind records filled with many scenes of remarkable grace because they never turned their hearts away from God. Let us look at verse 22 once again. As they began to sing and praise, the Lord set ambushes against the men of Ammon and Moab and Mount Seir, who were invading Judah, and they were defeated. The Ammonites and Moabites rose up against the men from Mount Seir to destroy and annihilate them. After they finished slaughtering the men from Seir, they helped to destroy one another. In this way, they returned with great plunder and proclaimed a resounding victory. Let us see verse 26. On the fourth day, they assembled in the valley of Berakah, where they praised the Lord. This is why it is called the Valley of Berakah to this day. Then, led by Jehoshaphat, all the men of Judah and Jerusalem returned joyfully to Jerusalem, for the Lord had given them cause to rejoice over their enemies. Verse 35. Later, Jehoshaphat king of Judah made an alliance with Ahaziah king of Israel, whose ways were wicked. He agreed with him to construct a fleet of trading ships. After these were built at Etzion-Geber, Eleazar son of Dodavahu of Maresha prophesied against Jehoshaphat, saying, "Because you have made an alliance with Ahaziah, the Lord will destroy what you have made." The ships were wrecked and were not able to set sail to trade. God was not pleased with those who drew close to evildoers. This, too, is a lesson we must learn from the history of the past. Ahaziah repeatedly did what was evil in the eyes of God. When he fell ill and faced death, he did not seek God for healing. Instead, he sent his officials to inquire of Baal-zebub. Jehoshaphat pleased God in countless ways, yet he kept company with a wicked man, maintained fellowship with him, and entered into partnership with him. In this, God withheld his blessing. God shattered every venture that Jehoshaphat had set out to accomplish. Today, through the history of King Asa and King Jehoshaphat, we must learn the lesson of how God's blessings are received. May you and I become the ones who receive all the wisdom for blessings from the Bible. No matter what the circumstances, Jehoshaphat always placed God first and foremost. However, for someone like Ahaziah, the idol worshippers he could see with his own eyes always came first. They seemed competent, impressive, and capable to him. Because of this, the things of God were always pushed aside. By continually placing such things first, Ahaziah found that God took no pleasure in anything he did. Today, through the records of King Asa and King Jehoshaphat, I believe we have gained much insight into when God, the sovereign ruler of the entire universe, bestows his great blessing of salvation and when he withholds it. In light of this, may we always be the ones who ask ourselves, what is the path that pleases our Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother? And what kind of faith must we hold fast to for the sake of salvation? When God's help is with us, even the impossible becomes possible. Yet without His help, there are countless times when what seemed certain to succeed comes to nothing. The source of all blessings is God. Hoping that all the children of Zion will always correctly discern what pleases God and what He desires, so that they honor His decrees, regulations, and laws, and carry out all His commands with grace, dwelling continually in the abundance of God's blessings. I would like to conclude today's sermon. Thank you very much.